Hello, welcome back to Time to Dice Character Creation, where we make your favorite fictional characters in Pathfinder and Starfinder 2nd Edition. We have returned from the sea, fresh with a build from Reaper from Overwatch. Once known as Gabriel Reyes, Reaper was a decorated soldier and a commander of Overwatch's covert ops unit, Blackwatch. That is, until an unexpected betrayal and a little bit of illegal experimentation transformed him into something else entirely. His body is now constantly in flux between rapidly deteriorating and regenerating, turning what once was your run-of-the-mill super soldier into a wraith-like entity of living shadow. Reaper now stalks battlefields as a merciless assassin, dual-wielding hellfire shotguns to tear through his foes. And if that wasn't enough, he can now transform into an intangible cloud of smoke, teleport across the battlefield in his wall of shadows, and draw life from his victims. So beware of spoilers, and without further ado, let's get started. So what do we need to make good old Smokey the Bear? Well, the first thing that separates Reaper from most assassins is his unusual anatomy, that not only keeps him right on the brink of life and death, but also gives him unique powers like the ability to turn into smoke and teleport. Next, we need to be able to sustain ourselves with the blood of our enemies, turning their pain into our gain. And finally, let's make sure that we can do all of that while also unleashing an inordinate amount of gunfire on our enemies. I'm not sure if you can classify Reaper as a human anymore, but he definitely started that way, so we'll go with the human ancestry, giving us 8 hit points, a medium size, 25-foot movement speed, and an attribute boost with dexterity and constitution. So whether we are shooting or getting shooted ourselves, we are top of our class. Finally, for our heritage, we're going to pick up skilled human to pick up training and later expertise in performance? That doesn't seem right. This may not seem super in character, but even Reaper has a couple of dancing modes. We're really just getting this for prerequisites for something else down the line. For our background, whether in our time working as a police officer, a Blackwatch commander, or a Talon field agent, Reaper is no stranger to violence, making the warrior background the perfect choice. This background gives us another boost to con and dex, as well as training in intimidation and warfare lore, and the intimidating glare skill feat, removing the auditory trait from our demoralize attempts and replacing it with a visual trait. Once the homicidal ghost guy starts brandishing twin shotguns, it doesn't really matter what he says, now does it? Reaper's combat style relies almost entirely on its martial abilities, with just enough magic that we can't give him a purely martial class. Instead, we'll take the Mage's class for a splash of void-based magic to augment our gunslinging. As a Mage's, we get 8 plus con hit points per level, and begin trained in perception and reflex saves, and expert in fortitude and will saves. All Magi get training in Arcana, which will augment with survival for tracking down former members of Overwatch, and stealth for getting close enough to take them out. Our guns don't have the largest range. And speaking of guns, we get trained in all simple and martial weapons. The best fit for our Hellfire shotguns is probably the Dragon Mouth pistol, but if your GM is okay with Starfinder content and an otherwise Pathfinder build, you could spring for the rotating pistols, for the agile trait, and the lack of need to reload after every shot. And finally, we get trained proficiency and up to medium armor. For our stats, strength starts at a +0. Reaper went through a super soldier enhancement program, but unlike Marvel super soldiers, this mostly just makes him really good at shooting things. Dexterity is at a +4. Did I mention we're really good at shooting things? Constitution is at a +3. We have to be able to take hits from everything from a sentient gorilla with a taser to a guy whose name is literally Doomfist. Intelligence is at a +0, which is honestly pretty low, but we just need our stats more in other places. Like Wisdom at a +1. Being a master assassin requires at least a little investment in perception. And finally, Charisma clocks in at a +1. Anyone who has the name Reaper has to be at least a little bit intimidating or a little bit edgy, and in our case, it's both. Hey, real quick, before we get to the real meat of this build, if you like this video, make sure to let us know by liking, commenting, and subscribing. It helps us feed the channel, and the channel is always hungry. Alright, back to the video. We'll kick off this build with a hybrid study, reflecting how we blend our martial and magical prowess. Unfortunately for us, if our weapon of choice is a ranged weapon, we don't get much of a choice here. Starlit Span lets us spell strike with ranged weapons out to our first range increment. Spell strike is like the primary reason to go mages, so it'd be nice if we could actually use it with our primary choice of weapons. Speaking of spell strike, level 1 also gives us spell strike, letting us combine our strikes with a magical spell that takes 1 or 2 actions to cast. If the spell required an attack roll, we use a single attack roll for both the strike and the spell. But if the spell required a saving throw, the target must make their saving throw only if we make a successful strike. Once we make a spell strike, we can't make another one until we spend an action with the concentrate trait to recharge it, or to use a conflict spell. Speaking of conflict spells, our hybrid study also gives us a conflict spell. In our case, we get Shooting Star, a one-action spell that lets us make a ranged strike with a ranged or thrown weapon that not only ignores the target's concealment and treats their cover as 1 degree less, but also grants these benefits to all allies on a successful hit. Speaking of Arcane Cascade, oh, wait, I forgot to mention Arcane Cascade. We also get Arcane Cascade. Whenever we use a spell or a spell strike, our next action can be to enter an Arcane Cascade stance. While in this stance, all of our attacks do extra force damage. Since this only augments our melee attacks, there isn't much benefit to offer here. But hey, if you have an action to burn, you can always use a quick melee. For our Ancestry feat, we get Haughty Obstinacy, meaning if we roll a success on a saving throw against a mental effect that attempts to directly control our actions, we instead treat the result as if we critically succeeded. And the same happens if a creature rolls a failure on an intimidation check to coerce us, treating the result as a critical failure instead. After all, if anyone's going to be bossing people around, it's going to be us. Finally, we're a spellcasting class, so let's get spells. For our cantrips, we'll pick up Void Warp to deal void damage to a creature within 30 feet with a basic fortitude save, and making them enfeebled 1 on a critical failure. We're mostly getting this for that smoky effect around our bullets when we spell strike. Warp Step will be the first step toward our Wraith form, speeding us up by giving us a plus 5 foot status bonus to our speed until the end of our turn, while letting us strike twice in the process. Phase Bolt is a basic spell attack roll that deals piercing damage, but it does reduce any circumstance bonus to AC that an enemy is benefiting from by 2, letting us shoot foes behind cover or shields. Armor targets are particularly challenging for Reaper because damaging armor is not the same as damaging foes, and therefore doesn't heal us. Not that matters yet for us, because we can't heal from strikes anyways. Telekinetic Projectile does largely the same thing as Phase Bolt, but it does a little bit more damage at the cost of not piercing through cover. This will be our bread and butter for when we don't care about magical flare, we just want to do damage and a lot of it. Finally, the Sigil spell lets us put down a spray on any surface that we touch. The spray can be up to 1 square inch in size, and can be either visible or invisible, and scrubbed off with 5 minutes of work. We also get first rank spells at this level, but mage's spells work a little differently than most other spellcasters. Rather than getting more and more spells as we level up, we max out at 4 spell slots, divided between our highest 2 ranking spells. Because of this, we're covering spells that really fit Reaper's character, along with a couple lower rank spells that can fill spell slots until the more fitting spells become available. For rank 1, that means that we only get to talk about jump, letting us jump to any location within 30 feet. Later on, we'll be able to shadow step to teleport from place to place, but this will help us avoid at least ground-based attacks until we get to that point. Okay, that's enough magic, let's talk about the guns. At level 2, we get the Gunslinger dedication, giving us a Gunslinger's way of our choice. Way of the Pistol Arrow is the dual-wielding way, so let's go with that. Right now, this doesn't do much for us, besides giving us a skill increase and unlocking some feats down the road. But we do get the Assurance skill feat, letting us forgo making a stealth check and instead automatically receive a result of 10 plus our proficiency modifier. Assassinations are so much easier without the 5% chance to accidentally walk up and introduce yourselves to your mark before you strike. Level 3 Magi get a general feat. The Fleet feat gives us 5 extra feet of movement on all of our strides. Tracer can literally jump forward at a time, so you're really going to need this if you want to keep up. We also get rank 2 spells. Bone Spray can easily be reflavored to make our Hellfire shotguns more like actual shotguns. Or at least how video games have taught me that shotguns work. This spell forces all creatures within a 15-foot cone to make a reflex save against piercing and persistent bleed damage. At 4th level, we pick up basic shooting to get a Gunslinger feat of our choice. Dual weapon reload prevents us from needing a hand free to reload, as long as our other hand is being used to carry another one-handed weapon. One of Magus' biggest weaknesses is their action economy, making it hard to do everything we want in a single round. So let's not make it worse by having to stow and redraw our weapons every time we want to reload. With the Shadow Mark skill feat, when we attempt a stealth check to avoid notice while following a target, that target takes a -2 circumstance penalty to their perception DC, and if we start an encounter with them while we're shadowing them, the target not only takes the penalty to their initiative roll, but also their perception DC to determine if they notice us. 5th level Magi get weapon expertise and lightning reflexes, as well as an ancestry feat that we can use to get Clever Improviser, letting us add our level -1 to all checks that we're untrained in, as well as allowing us to make checks that would usually require trained proficiency even if we're untrained. Reaper's been around for quite a while, and has worked for several different teams. If there's something that needs to be done, he's probably done it. And this lets our skills reflect that. 5th level Magi also get 3rd rank spells. Vampiric Feast is the keystone spell for this entire build. I would not blame you if you filled every spell slot from here until the end of the game with it. This spell does void damage to any creature we hit with a basic fortitude save, while healing us in the form of temporary hit points for half the damage dealt. Normally, we'd have to be in melee range to get this off, but with our Starlit Span allowing us to spell strike with guns, we now have a consistent way to replicate the Reaping ability. Sure, it doesn't work on every strike like it does in the game, but it does heal us for half rather than a third of the damage we deal, so you win some, you lose some. Slinger's Readiness at level 6 gives us our Guardian's Way's initial deed. For the Way of the Pistol Arrow, that means we get 10 paces, a free action that we can use whenever we roll initiative to get a +2 circumstance bonus to that roll, and immediately draw one of our guns, as well as letting us step 10 feet as a free action at the beginning of our first round of combat. If there's one character in Overwatch that I'd expect to win a duel, it's probably Cole Cassidy, but Reaper's a pretty close second. For this level skill feat, we get Slippery Prey, reducing the multiple attack penalty that we take from multiple attempts to escape in the same round. We can literally turn our entire body into mist. That's pretty hard to hold down. We get Weapon Specialization at level 7, increasing the damage we deal with any strike that we're least expert in, and Studious Spells, which grants us a few extra but very specific spell slots. The only real standout here that really fits the character is True Strike, and that's mostly because it's pretty easy to reflavor, being very accurate with our weapons. We also got Fast Recovery as our general feat, reducing the stage of any disease or poison by 2 each time we succeed at a fortitude save against it, or by 3 on a critical success. Sure, having every molecule in your body constantly breaking down and regenerating sounds plenty painful, but hey, on the bright side we recover from the sniffles pretty fast. This level also unlocks 4th rank spells, and we get the 2 big ones. First, Vapor Form, which serves as the perfect stand-in for our Wraith form. We dissolve into smoke, gaining resistance 8 to physical damage, and immunity to precision damage. While in this form, we can't cast spells or attack, and we can't use items. But we get a fly speed of 10 feet, and can slip through cracks like mist. And Translocate lets us teleport to any spot we can see within 120 feet. That's it. Not hard to explain, but really, really helpful. At level 8, we lean harder into the shadows with the Shadow Dancer dedication, giving us greater dark vision so that even magical darkness can't hide anyone from us, and a +2 bonus to stealth checks when we're in dim light or darkness. For our skill feat, we choose Terrifying Resistance, giving us a bonus to saving throws against any creature that we've demoralized within the last 24 hours. Important note here, this only applies when we've actively demoralized them, not just when they're genuinely afraid of us. Otherwise, we'd basically be getting constant bonuses, and that'd be a bit much, even for Reaper. Level 9 Magi get Expert Spellcasting, Alertness, and Resolve, which boosts our will saves to Master and upgrades all successful will saves to critical successes. For our Ancestry feat, Incredible Improvisation gives us a +4 bonus to any skill check that we're untrained in, but only once per day. It's a great way to fake expertise when the moment demands it. Our 5th rank spell is Unfettered Movement, a great reflection of Reaper's relentless advance. We ignore any penalties to speed, and we automatically escape any non-magical effects that try to grapple us, as well as magical ones of this spell's rank or lower. Even better, this spell gets added to our Studious spell list at level 13, meaning we can cast it without giving up our main spell slots for more damaging effects. At level 10, our mobility truly becomes supernatural. We gain the Shadow Jump spell, a focus spell that works just like Translocate, but it can only take us to areas of dim light or darkness, and instead of spending a spell slot, it only costs a focus point. That means, even if we burn through it, we're only 10 minutes away from using it again, perfect for slipping into position or getting out when things get dicey. We also pick up Swift Sneak, letting us move at our full speed while sneaking. It's a lot easier to ambush your prey when they're not outpacing you by 20 feet every round. At level 11, Magi get Medium Armor Expertise, and we grab the Sing 1 Tenacity feat, turning our Shifting Biology into Survivability. We treat any enfeebled or drained conditions that we suffer from as if their values were 1 lower, as well as gaining resistance 5 to any persistent bleed damage, and reducing the recovery DCs of any persistent damage to 11, or 6 with proper help. For our spells, we learn Vampiric Extangulation, which works exactly like Vampiric Feast, but affects every creature within a 30-foot cone. This doesn't exactly pair well with Spell Strike, since that would only make it affect one target. But it's an incredible first step towards our own version of Death Blossom, hitting every creature around us with 1 sweep. At level 12, we sharpen our defenses and our fear factor. Uncanny Dodge ensures that we're not caught off guard by hidden, undetected, or flanking enemies our level or lower, even if they have the surprise attack feature. At this point, Reaper knows every trick in the book. Finally, we'll pick up Terrified Retreat, letting us send lower level enemies fleeing whenever we critically succeed at a check to demoralize them. Luckily for us, when death comes for you, there's nowhere to run. 14th level Magi pick up Weapon Mastery, tightening our offenses, and an Ancestry feat which we can use to take Bounce Back. This feat lets us recover from dying once per day without increasing our wounded condition, as our constant regeneration simply pulls us back from the brink. Level 14 finally gives us a reason to use Arcane Cascade with the Arcane Shroud class feat. Now, whenever we enter the Arcane Cascade stance, we automatically gain the benefits of 1 of 3 spells until the end of our next turn. False Vitality gives us temporary hit points to stay in the fight a little bit longer. Flicker grants us resistance to all damage, and the ability to teleport, albeit in a random direction. And Fleet Step gives us a 30-foot status bonus to our speed. On top of that, we pick up Foil Senses, letting us sneak past special senses like Scent or Tremor Sense by masking our scent or gliding just above the ground. At level 15, Magi get Greater Weapon Specialization for even more damage, just in case anyone mistook us for a tank, and the Juggernaut feature, which boosts our fortitude saves to master and makes all successful fortitude saves count as critical successes. For our general feat, we'll grab toughness, which is an oldie but a goodie. It gives us extra hit points equal to our level and reduces the DC of any recovery checks we make by 1. Sometimes winning a shootout just comes down to raw durability. At level 16, our lethality gets a major boost. We pick up Shadow Sneak Attack, adding 1d6 precision damage to any strike we make against an off-guard enemy, as long as we're using an agile, finesse, or ranged weapon. Would you look at that? Our Hellfire shotguns are ranged weapons. We also get Lasting Coercion as our skill feat, letting us extend the effects of the coerced action to up to a full month. 17th level brings Medium Armor Mastery and Master Spellcasting, as well as an Ancestry feat that we'll use to pick up Multi-Talented, grabbing the Ranger Dedication. This gives us the Hunt Prey action, so we can now use an action to mark a target as our prey, gaining a +2 bonus to perception checks to seek them, and a +2 bonus on survival checks to track them should they get out of our sight. Then, at level 18, we perfect our Wraith form at all times, with the Shadowmaster class feat. In Dim Light or Darkness, we now have constant resistance 5 to all damage except for force and attacks from ghost touch weapons. Plus, whenever we make a reflex save while in the shadows, we reroll twice and take the high result. This combines beautifully with our skill feat, Legendary Sneak, which lets us hide even without cover or concealment. Reaper doesn't need walls, he literally is the darkness. For our penultimate level, all Magi get double Spell Strike, letting us use Spell Strike twice in a row with a single spell slot, effectively doubling the value of any spell that we cast. We'll also pick up Canny Acumen, boosting our perception proficiency to master, so now nothing will get the drop on us, even a far too heavy pilot who has the ability to jump through time. And finally, at level 20 we hit our capstone. Supreme Spell Strike makes us permanently quickened, giving us an extra action each turn that we can use to strike or recharge our Spell Strike, meaning we're always ready to deal massive damage and heal a little bit if we're feeling peckish. And to cap it all off, we'll get the skill feat Scare to Death, pushing our intimidation to the point that just our presence can kill. We make an intimidation check against the will DC of any creature within 30 feet. On a failure, the target's frightened 1. On a success, they're frightened 2. But on a critical success, they have to make a will save against their intimidation DC. Any result other than a critical failure makes the target frightened 2 and fleeing for a round. But if they do manage to actually critically fail their save, their heart stops, resulting in instant death. And that's how we bring death itself to Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Reaper stalks the battlefield, slipping through shadows, tearing through foes, and coming back from the brink of death again and again. If you've enjoyed watching this build, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment telling us which Overwatch hero or villain, or any other hero or villain, that you want to see next. Until next time, just keep rolling high, and we'll catch you in the next one.